How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Wolf, and welcome to my very first build progression in Last Epoch. This is going to be, I'm calling it Armageddon Shaman, basically, because my plan was to make it Leapquake sort of character, and the reason being is they added a new unique with the Season 2 update that makes it so that when you use a traversal skill, it'll put an earthquake underneath you. Now, that was the sort of focus that I was going for, but of course I need to go and get the thing, and I'm playing in solo account found rather than trade league, so I have to try and chance it myself off of a ascendance to be able to try and make the weapon. So I needed to come up with something until then, and what I've made is kind of wild, not gonna lie. And all of this is possible without really any unique interactions either. Like, I'm just wearing absolute garbage. I have a level 13 helmet. Like, I have level 30 boots. Like, I just threw this character together. I mean, these are kind of crazy with 71% melee damage. And my weapon's pretty nutty. But, yeah, I mean, otherwise, the rest of it's just kind of thrown together. Gambler's Fallacy is kind of crazy powerful, though. This is 100% crit strike chance. But, if you haven't dealt a crit recently. So it means that every time you leap into a pack, because of course we're playing Leapquake, the first leap is always going to crit. Like the AoE here is going to crit for whatever you hit. And then you saw there that when I do a leap, I get an AoE. That's upheaval. Oh, my game's lagging a little. That's upheaval, and this is going to be our primary source of leap damage at the moment. We also have Earthquake as well in the build, if you want to use that for single target as well. But I'm not using that right now, because unfortunately, this build has a couple of mana problems that I'm going to fix. It's called build progression for a reason. So let me hop into a map here, and I'll show you what this looks like here. Let's find something that seems doable, because of course, I'm a little lower level right now. I'm working my way through the main campaign. I got up to Lagon, and I wanted to farm a little bit before taking him on. But here's pretty much what the build looks like. So the goal is to group as many things as possible with the war cry, and then leap into the pack like so. Let's wait for him to die. Grab that. Ooh, elemental damage, hell yeah. So we leap in, we leap again. And if we kill things, it'll automatically trigger our leap cooldown reset. And then so long as we have mana, we're able to leap and drop an upheaval underneath it, which if it kills something, will reset my leap cooldown. But if I don't have enough mana, you'll see kind of what happens, because I have massive avalanches also triggering off of themselves. So the way that's working is I have avalanche on my bar here, but I have it set up so that an aftershock from earthquake will actually trigger the avalanches going off, which do crazy single target damage if you can manage to get things to stand in them. The only unfortunate part is that when it triggers a bunch, it goes through a lot of mana very, very quickly. So that's probably what I'm going to be working on fixing tomorrow, most likely. But I kind of like where I've ended this off so far. I have a character that can do pretty good damage without much issue. I can clear through most of these maps. And then once I get it to a point where I'm not going negative 35 on the major drops, then we're going to be pretty good. I don't know if I'm going to fix that with max mana or regen, or if I'm going to even just go and decide to use just one thing. Because, I mean, if I wanted to be mapping efficient, I would cut down to just the one, like just the upheaval. Because right now, I kind of have everything going on at the same time, and it's a little much. The plan originally was just to leap into a pack, and then pop my war cry to group everything up. And that would be pretty much it. But you see there, all of the triggers go off, and they just kind of melt.
Impossible.
So yeah, when I started to put things together, it got kind of hilarious really quickly. It got to the point where this literally lagged my game in some of the like higher areas with more stuff in it. So that is something that you might have to look out for. I did have to turn some of my settings down to make it a little more manageable for the stream. Which, if you want to see this character in action on the stream, you should be able to go and see the full stream VOD on Wolfian Experience. Probably about a day or so after this comes out. Anything else? Anything worthwhile here? Nothing? But yeah, you can see what winds up happening there. So basically, I have a trigger loop set up with this sequence of skills here. So we leap in, and when I leap in, our goal is to get one of the resets here from regain stamina, which will make it so you have a chance to reset your Fury Leap's cooldown whenever you kill something with any other skill. And then I also have Aspect of the Mantis here, so that when you leap and do like a really small leap, you'll then be able to get your cooldown back potentially again. So we have all of the ways to get our cooldown back, and then the next thing I'm going to go for is as much cooldown reduction as possible on leap. Because you can only get the cooldown reset once every 5 seconds, so having the cooldown be as short as humanly possible is going to be the best option that I can find, unless there's something else that I'm missing for being able to permanently leap over and over and over again. But then we move into a Warcry here, and this is where it gets interesting, because I have it set up to be converted to cold damage, which is going to make it so that the bleed chance from all sources is converted to frostbite chance, and then I can do a bunch of stacks of frostbite with Heart of Rhyme. And then with Apprehend, I can then pull things in. So leap in, and then Warcry to group everything up, and then keep in mind, it might reset, but it might also not reset. Like if you're just using the points and regain stamina, you might not get a reset. You might reset with the Aspect of the Mantis, though, to then let you jump again. So you saw what I was doing there, where you leap in, Warcry to group again, and then if the Warcry kills stuff, that'll reset your cooldown. Or you might get a reset from short hops like that, which will then go into a trigger loop and start to decimate things like so. And you can see, since the frostbite is actually a damage over time cold effect, you'll see that some of the mobs are also just slowly burning down from that, which is where the Warcry comes in. Because like I said, we're scaling cold and damage over time, because the aftershocks that I can do are also converted to damage over time. So you'll be wondering how I'm getting aftershocks and what have you without the actual weapon that I needed, which is that I dropped an idol that has 27 or 28% chance to create an aftershock under a nearby enemy on melee attack. Now, this counts as a melee attack. Each trigger counts as a melee attack. Yeah. Everything just works, and it's beautifully crazy because I can go too wild. I mean, that's not a bad thing, of course, but it definitely means I wind up in scenarios where I'm negative in mana all the time. And you need to be a little more careful sometimes. Regroup everything up. Blow it all up again. Give it a second for my mana to come back. Like I said, now just imagine I have full mana with my actual mana fused gear. I'm gonna die to that explosion if I stay there. Impossible. Now, the primary goal of the Warcry is, like I said, you group up everything. You can also get a group for the Leap Slam as well. Because if you group everything when you first leap in, then when the avalanches come down and the aftershocks go off, the aftershocks will overlap everything, which will then trigger the avalanches back to back. Now, bossing on this character is not the greatest unless you use Earthquake and you manually equipped Earthquake. But the reason I'm not doing that right now is because it burns too much mana to use Earthquake in the primary rotation. But you'll see that I'm keeping up decent frostbite stacks when I use my Warcry for a really good burst. And then I just keep resetting my slam because he keeps summoning stuff. Impossible. Otherwise, my goal is just to keep upheavaling on single target. Or, if you want to do a little more damage, like I said, I'll show you the Earthquake rendition here. That's the base, by the way, the Titan Femur. That's the one that I need to roll into the legendary that I need. So I'm just kind of collecting those casually. So here, I'll show you what the Earthquake does. you'll see all the aftershocks go off, and then once the aftershocks go off, that goes and drops all of those, drops all the avalanches, and then the avalanches also have a chance to trigger upheavals as well. So when the proc chain decides to go, it decides to go. It's absolutely beautiful, but I've yet to get to a point where I can just like sustain a crazy proc chain, but I'm hoping to get there. Because for example, you do one earthquake, and then that earthquake does the aftershocks, which then does all the triggers, and this pack would be probably dead if I had mana. See if I can group everything up in a second here. The cool thing about this game is since you can go into negative mana, you can actually time your like skill usages. Because in negative mana you can't actually use anything, but if you time it just right, that your last hit's gonna put you into negative mana, you can get as much value as humanly possible out of your DPS rotation. So, let me show you the skill tree here. Just the quick rendition if you want to just grab it and go. Is that, and my gear and stats like something like this so far. A lot of melee damage, a lot of cold damage, reasonable amount of damage over time, and then the skill tree. This is the default setup I got going on, and then this is the shaman setup. So I'll give you a quick little rundown. Basically, gear is just cold damage, fizz damage, carried by the weapon right now. All of my bleed gets converted to frostbite chance, which is really cool. And then this drop is kind of turbo carrying me with the ability to spawn the aftershocks. Because the way it works, like I was saying before, is that the aftershocks will then allow me to get some really crazy stuff here. Because avalanches every third boulder creates an earthquake. But if we go to earthquake, aftershock hits have a chance to summon an avalanche boulder on their location. When this effect triggers, it consumes mana. The boulder is affected by your avalanche skill tree. This is where things get really stupid. And then, if you go into Leap Slam here, we take Violent Upheaval, which when you land, you cast Upheaval, right? So we leap in, the upheaval goes around us because we have Erupting Earth, which makes it so it does a massive AoE. That's converted to cold from Glacial Cascade here. It also has a chance to do shockwaves. It has reduced mana cost so that I can get as much of them as possible. On the Warcry, like I said, we have the group up here. We have the cold conversion and the deal damage, which is really, really nice. And then on Earthquake, it's Snow Crash. And then we pick up Crater and Excavation. So Avalanche hits will have a chance to... the impact from the large boulders will have a chance to create an upheaval towards a nearby enemy. And then we increase our chance for the small boulders to become large boulders. So, we leap in. That puts the upheaval underneath us. We maybe kill something and leap again. And then we Warcry. Or we leap in. We Warcry to group everything. And then we leap again. And then now we're on cooldown. But we end up having the Aftershock trigger from leaping. And that Aftershock will then trigger the Snow Crash, which will then do a bunch of the boulders, which have chances to be large boulders, which will then trigger the avalanche, or will then trigger the earthquake on every third boulder. Yeah, it's a lot, I know. But basically, you press one button, you press leap, and a lot of things go off. Yeah, it's been really fun. It's been a good time. I need to optimize the mana like issues and whatnot, but otherwise this is one of my favorite renditions of Leapquake that I think I've played. It's so dumb. Like, just the fact that I can trigger so much stuff while not really having to do much is just kind of mental. And then my earthquake, you just earthquake something and that happens. So yeah, this is a pretty fun build.